Hello friends, welcome back to our episode 3 on ODATA learning series. So today we'll do a little interesting thing as we have been doing in first 2 episodes. Very simple ODATA service we have created, and we are able to successfully test it from Postman, right? So quickly show, yeah, it's working from Postman as well, and the simple ODATA service we have created. So now what we can do, instead of just calling all the time from Postman, it may happen that programmatically I need to consume some API, possible, right? So today let's create an application, a program, a web program. I have already created it, right? And I'll walk you through. Okay, I'll also give the code to the GitHub repository so that you can also try it out if you want. But let's quickly see what's happening. So what I've done, I've just created a variable and concatenating my URL, as you can see. And then I'm using a client called CLHTTP. So this class I'm just using to create a client, and passing this URL, it will basically give me some client reference, okay, object reference. So same thing like what we have been doing in Postman, same kind of setup we have to also do over here programmatically. So we are just giving an authentication part satisfied, user ID, password. Same we had to give in Postman too. Ignore this kind of syntax for the time being because I'm not making a post call. So I'm using a GET call, right? So this is a GET operation, as you can see over here. So this is the GET operations I'm trying to make it, and also setting up certain header parameters and application JSON. If I'm not able to recall, so this is under header section. You see accept application JSON, so that the response comes in a JSON fashion, a JavaScript object notation fashion. Once we do that, what next? We're just making a send request, right, to the server or to that URL. And if everything fine, I'll be supposed to see the data over here in the receipt section, and finally we can extract the actual data from this response cData method, get cData method. So I'll get a stream of the data. So let's quickly debug it and see like what's happening. Then probably you'll understand. So let's run this, and if I just make F6, size server is 0, I got the client generated. Now authentication successful. This is the get method I'm just attaching, right? Set the header fields, and finally I'm making a send. And till now size server is actually 0, no complaint. But the moment I make a request to receive, notice that size server it's set to 1. All right. So and just get the data. Let's see what data I have received. Some information I have received. I can show it in an HTML format. Now it says it's complaining on certain SSL PR certificate and trusted. So we can also see certain log on our ICM, and the transaction is MICM. This particular thread. So I can select it, go to trace file, display all, and here we can see our program initialer, which is an above. Yeah, if you see certain things over here, we'll find we found something in SSL, PR certificate untrusted, same sort of an error which I've been receiving, right? So same kind of a certificate issue I am also receiving in my ICM, which is an internet communication management. From Postman, it is working fine. Do you know why? Because in the settings section, I have made this SSL certificate verification turn off. If I make a turn on, close it and just make a request, it will also complain that SSL error and it is not able to validate or verify the certificate. Quickly, let me show you one more thing. Instead of this URL, we can also test it with the Northwind service, which is a famous one, everyone knows. So I just uncomment this. Yeah, so this is the URL I'm using, and if I just access, also one more point, can I if I show this URL over the browser, right? Let's see what happens in the Chrome. If I just open it, here also I'm seeing a problem, right? The connection is not private. So everywhere this certificate is causing an issue. It's saying an error and certificate, it's not a valid certificate. I want to show this program is actually not incorrectly behaving, because I can now debug once again. So now we are actually accessing data from Northwind and authenticate. It doesn't need any authentication, but that's okay. Now I'm making a receive and see the size server it's still 0, right? Because that particular SSL problem didn't happen with the Northwind. Why it happened with us? And that will explain. That is a very interesting concept. And you see the response we got. Yeah, the enter JSON data for my product I have received. So my program is actually working correctly, but something wrong with our service URL, and that is with certificate. So before we try fixing this certificate, let's understand the concept in a layman language to understand how things work, and then we will set up things in our system also. All right. So this is a very simple diagram, and where I'm trying to explain that how the certificate actually works in real world, in our internet world. So let's say this is my computer and I'm trying to access youtube.com or any kind of Facebook or Twitter, any renowned website I'm trying to call, and my computer doesn't give this kind of a message, right, or not secure or something. So computer's pretty well, I mean, it's working fine at YouTube without complaining. And how it happens? It happens because computer finds a valid certificate, right, from YouTube, this particular domain. A question would be like, how YouTube got the certificate? Who gave the certificate? So just like in our real world, right, when you ask for any job or go for a job interview, we carry all the certificates, academic certificates, right? And who are basically giving the certificates? Obviously, depending on your college boards or university boards, right? So they are basically offering the certificate based on your exam results and if you are qualified the exam, etc. Same things happens in the internet. And for YouTube, there is a renowned certificate authority, which is called Google. There are many other authorities too. It's not only Google. But for YouTube, they basically say like, hey, Google, this is my certificate signing request. Can you please give me a certificate? Now Google CA will be telling, okay, let me do that. But how they will do it? They will create two keys internally. Okay, one is called a private key, right? Kind of a mathematical function. We don't need to understand how this works. That's pretty fine. And out of this private key, they will create a public key. So private and public, the name itself implies something is very much confidential and something is kind of an open secret, right? So over the internet, this particular public key will be just moving around, and there is no harm because the private key is still safe with the Google, right? Now this public key will be used to sign this particular request, and then Google will offer a certificate to youtube.com, and that certificate computer validates. But how computer know this certificate it's raised by Google or not, who authorized? Obviously by reading out the certificate public key, they knows, okay, this public is from Google CA. Yes, I know this board. This is a very renowned authority. No need to complain. Move ahead, right? So that's how things works. Now comes to our scenario, right? So instead of youtube.com, we have some other URL, right? Which is this one. This is the URL. And but the problem is who will authorize my this particular domain? My domain is what? My domain is something like VHC ls4HCI. Then this is my domain, DNS, and the other one is actually 50001 is my port. So who will validate this domain, right? So I cannot just go for some certain testing. I cannot ask Google CA to authorize it, right? So I have to do some very simple thing, and that is where the self-signing certificate comes into picture. So in this case, this particular URL, which is actually we need to create a certificate for, and it's all coming out of the SAP, right? So from SAP, we have to create a certificate signing request or CSR file, which will be validated or authorized by my own public key, and eventually I'll be able to create a certificate. And that certificate we have to get back to SAP, as well as we have to tell our computer like, hey, if you see this certificate, you just allow, don't complain, right? So this is what we are going to do next. So to perform this task, overall creating the certificates, I just use the OpenSSL. Better I can create a GitHub repository for this kind of commands and all that I'm going to use. I think that will be useful for you, I guess. So this is the platform where from I just downloaded this executable file for Windows 64 machine, OpenSSL. It's a light version, and this is sufficient. You just install it in your machine, and you can also set your environment variable so that OpenSSL command can be executed from any folder of your system, right? So that you can do before performing the following tasks. All right, so to create the certificate, few steps I have just documented that I'll follow along. I created a folder, empty folder, which is under the root C directory, and this one I have just opened in my command prompt in an administrative mode. I'll be just copy this, and probably I can paste it, so that way my directory is showing 0 bytes empty, and I'm ready to perform this task. So the first one is I have to create a public key, the private key, and for that we can go to this URL and copy this, paste it and run, it will ask for certain PIM passphrase. Anything you can give. I have just given 1 2 3 4 5. Re-verification, same passphrase 1 2 3 4 5, and it will create the private key, and that is the root ca.key. All right. Once I do that, the next step is the creating a public key out of this private key. So the step is here, and we'll be just copying this command. And what will happen? It will just create this root ca.pem, which is the output file. It will again check for the same root ca key passphrase, which is 1 2 3 4 5. Then certain questions it will ask. The country key is India. And that's all. If everything fine, then you will see some PM file got created, which is the public key that we generated from this private key. All right. So now what next? We have to make our OS comfortable with this public key. So let's do that. For that, what we'll do, we'll just run a tool called MMC, and that is called the Microsoft Management Console. Right, so that will run. So this is my Microsoft Management Console. So how to start? You just go to File, click on Add, remove snap-in, certificates, click on Add, select this computer account, click on Next, local computer, finish. Okay, that way this particular things will be created. Double click on that, and now the first two folders is what our point of interest. Expand this STRUST, you will see this certificate, but for personal you don't have this certificate. All right, so no problem. Let's double click on this STRUST root certificate, select this one, right click, all tasks, import. By default local machine selected. Next, this is where I have to select this particular path, because from here the public key I have to fetch into this. So let's paste it, and all files. So this is one I'm going to select. Next, the default certificate storage will trusted root, and finally finish. I will get this message. If you just double click, you will see something got created called Somnath. Okay, because this is what our organization name. If you double click, you'll see this is the certificate issued by and issued to is the same. It's a self-signing kind of, and it's still valid from 2050. All right. So the same process will also follow along for the personal. So let's do that. But for that we don't have a certificate, so we'll right click on that, all tasks, import, paste it, check all files, PM again. This time certificate store is personal. So now you see this got created, and the Somnath is also available now in the personal directory, so that's fine. So let's close it, and it will ask to say make sure you save it. So by default it will go to the Windows tool and some default name console1. We just saved it. So what next? So now this OS part is done, and we have to do we have to just upload this particular public key to SAP site, and we have to create a DB entries. So for that, let's go to the transaction called STRUST. So STRUST, it's opened, and by default it comes at display mode. So make sure you click on this button, and now we are setting in a change mode, and double click on this SSL client standard, and here we'll be uploading this particular certificate public key, and you can see there is nothing Somnath is listed, correct? So go to certificate, import, and in this directory I need to pass, so copy this file path, SAP site, sorry, not this one here, and so this is the public key. Don't touch the private, just the public key, and it creates, it's actually imported, and this one you can see we just created this one. Make sure you click on this add to certificate list. It's a very important step. By doing this, you can see this now it's added, so click on save, and it will say like this is saved and ICM was notified. So that's where you don't need to restart ICM, it's already notified about this upload. So, and now one more thing you have to do, you have to select this line. You can double click once, go to certificate, but this time export, and export to database. So you can create a name called ZSOM. It will be starting with Z. Press enter and then select the root CA. Description, you can call it self-signed, and now you can just click on execute, and that way that certificate saved in the database. So that is available. You can see it over here in this table, VS Trust Center or certificate. Sorry, if you just refresh it, you'll see this one available. All right. So once it is done, our fourth step is complete. Let's go for the creating a signing request, because you have to just now create a CSR and have to give that CSR to the self-signing authority to create the final certificate, which I just explained. So this is one I'm going to create. For that, we go back to SAP STRUST, but this time double click on this SSL server standard. Click on this button that is called create certificate request. Select SHA-256. Click on here, put star.dummy.nodomain, star.dummy.nodomain. This is the alternate owner name. So click on OK. So this is the CSR created. So store it in a local file. So you see where it is storing. It's the same folder. Make sure everything in the same folder. That's the only place which is we have to store everything. So select this one as all files, and then server.csr. CSR is actually certificate signing request. If you don't put all files, then then it will be csr.txt, which will not work. So make sure you set to all files and then click on save. Now let's go back to our command prompt. Quickly see the files created. Yes, server CSR created. So now what next? We'll be going back to a notepad. See, we have to create the final certificate, and before that we need one intermittent extension file. So this is the file we're going to create now. Click on notepad, paste it, and click on save. Same file hopefully. If I just click on all files, so here will be file name is v3.ext. So this is an extension file, v3.ext. I'm saving it. Let's close. So this sixth step is also complete. Now the final one is creating this certificate. Select end-to-end ext. Now go there and let's clean this and paste it. So if everything fine, then it will again ask for the root CF passphrase, which is 12345 in my case, and boom, it creates the certificate, and this is called server.crt. So this step is also done, creating this one. The final step is like uploading the certificate response back to SAP. So go back to SAP. Now this button left to call, which is import certificate response. Click on this file. This time certificate I have to select. Allow. This is my certificate. Upload it. Save it. And that the certificate saved and ICM is notified. That's all. Our job is done. So what next? We can go to Postman. Currently SSL is not active. So let's click on SSL active. And if I just run, it will still say that's unable to verify the first certificate. So we have to actually add the certificate now. Go to certificate tab, click on, and PM file over here, you select it and you just select that PM file. I hope this is the correct. Yeah, PM file is this one, not the certificate, but the PM file. That's a public key. That you have to just store it, close it, and then boom, the data is coming perfectly with the SSL active from Postman. All right, so let's do one more thing. Let's check from Chrome also. So this is currently this way. If I refresh, it's asking for the user ID and password. Last time it was giving a problem, right? And the password is let's sign in. It doesn't complain anymore. It's an invalid certificate or something. You can see the certificate connection is secure and it's all good. We can also check one more thing. The certificate is valid. Now click on that. Yeah, it's a Somnath organization. Perfect. Right, so all our certificate is now valid, no more complaint. So what the final thing? We are facing an issue with our ABAP program. So let's do that. I don't know, Z ABAP. So this is the program. So this program we are just connecting with this URL, which is our service URL. So let's put a breakpoint over here in the receive section, just to see if it is working fine or not. So now it's size averse is 0 till now, and if we click on F6, still size averse is 0, no complaint. Earlier it used to give size averse 1, which is an HTTP communication failure, but now we have all resolved the SSL issue, and it's pretty good. So let's see what data it's picked from. Is it the data? Let's go to HTML browser. Perfect, we got the token all set, correct. So let's close it. I think all cool, everything resolved with this certificate error we could able to resolve. I think you enjoyed this session, learned something new, and because majority cases developers actually ignore this kind of a complicated topic. It sounds complicated, but actually it's not. If we look at in a more layman thought process, it's pretty simple. We'll again meet in the next episode. If you don't have my channel subscribed, make sure you subscribe this channel to see more videos on SAP related and BTP related topic, and we'll meet again. Till then, goodbye.